Bali yesterday. We've had an awful lot of fun with this AECF. It seems that now we're entering the world of renewable energy. We have even more acronyms to get to know, like CDMs and all these other things that we don't know. But we've had a lot of fun with this too, actually. We did a launch in Arusha, and the District Commissioner came in and announced the launch of the Arusha Enterprise Challenge Fund, which we thought was great. And then another person who was introducing got the first two things back to front and said it's the East Africa Challenge Fund. We were happy with that as well, actually. So one way or another, it seems to work. I'm going to wander about when I speak because I hate to say this, but this is a very difficult room with all the pillars. That's why we put these two things here. I thought if I wandered around, I'd make it even more difficult for you because then you can have to duck round the pillars and try and find me. But at least it might be a little bit more interesting than me standing up here for the rest of the morning. Good. Enough of the introduction. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to take you on a whistle-stop tour of the AECF, what we are, what we do, and then I'm going to introduce to you actually two competitions that we're currently running that are open to businesses in Uganda. I am aware that we're here primarily to launch React. That's great, but there is another competition that you might be interested in, so we'll tell you about that too. That's what I'm going to cover. Quick overview of the AECF, what we're about, how it works, what types of things we support. We're quite proud of how far we've gone so far, so we're going to do a little bit of bragging at that point and tell you how wonderful we are and what we've achieved to date. And then I'm going to talk about Ribbon React and the application process. When I finish, and when the Minister of State has spoken, we're going to take a break with him and hopefully the head of DFID and have a press conference outside. And then Anjali will take over from me and do a detailed presentation on React itself and having a question and answer session with you. So I'm not going to go into great depth. What is the AECF? Basically, it's a fund of donor money that for once has been made available to the private sector and only the private sector. That's a rare thing. That puts huge responsibility on you as the private sector and on us as the managers, because what we've got to do is to prove to the donor world that if we take donor money and we make it available to the for-profit private sector for a change, then not only can we get sustainable and commercially viable results, but we can have an even bigger development impact than when they gave the money to the not-for-profit world. So that's your challenge, and that is our challenge. The AECF, what is it? Is it a legal entity? No, it doesn't exist actually. It is a name. We are part of AGRA, the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa, which many of you may have heard of. How many of you have heard of AGRA? Quite well known. As you may know, AGRA is chaired by Kofi Annan, funded mainly by Bill Gates and Rockefeller. It is about agricultural transformation in Africa. We are a special initiative of AGRA. If you do business with us, you actually get a contract from AGRA. You don't get a contract from us as KPMG. We manage it for them. As you've heard already, we're multi-donor funded by the Dutch, by the British, by the Australians and various others. But both the competitions we're talking about here this morning are totally and solely funded by DFID, for which we're eternally grateful. Thank you, Jane. The fund is managed by my team, by a KPMG team. We're continent-wide. We have projects from Sierra Leone to South Africa. We have an office in Accra that looks after West Africa, an office in Johannesburg that looks after Southern Africa. We are very active in Zimbabwe, where we have 12 projects, and we have an office down there. And we do this with a consortia team led by KPMG. When we launched in Cape Town, the World Economic Forum in June 2008, we had committed to the fund $36 million. As of today, we're at $90 million. As of the end of this year, we will be $100 million. That's not enough. We can only do a little with $100 million. Our target is $200 million after another 18 months beyond. That means that the project we fund have to do really well and have to prove to everybody that we get great results. We'll only get more money if you, the private sector, do a good job. What are we about? Primarily about this: increasing jobs and incomes for large numbers of people in rural areas across Africa. How do we do it? We work with private sector companies. We finance business innovation in these sectors: agribusiness, rural financial services, renewable energy, and adaptation to climate change. We do it by running particular competitions either across the continent of Africa, or for particular regions of Africa, or for particular sectors, or whatever. That's what we do. I heard somebody say this morning that, I'm fed up with putting bids into different things. I never know when I'm going to get the answer. We run competitions and we run them on time. We're business friendly. When we say we're going to open a competition on a certain day, we open it on that day. When we're going to say we're going to close it on a certain day, we close it on that day. When we say you'll know the results by a certain day, you will know the results by a certain day. If you win, you will know. When the final committee meets, you will know within so many days of that meeting whether you've won or not. If we say we're going to contract by a certain day, we do it. Our job is to bridge that gap between having donor money and being business friendly and be able to work with you as business, as your partners, to make these things work. Each competition has its own eligibility and selection criteria. I'm not going to go into them in detail, but I'll just give you a few of the eligibility criteria so you understand what we're about. One, must be a private sector for-profit company. We cannot do business with the Royal Bank of Scotland because currently the British government own it. So it's more than just being a limited company. It must not be owned by government. In other words, it's a proper for-profit company. No associations, no trusts, no companies by guarantee. It is straight for-profit company. Do the companies have to be in Africa? No, they don't. We will do business with any company anywhere in the world, provided what they're going to do is happening in Africa. In this case, for the competition called REACT, as long as the project takes place in East Africa, the applicant can be from anywhere in the world. Obviously, their application has to be in line with the rules of that competition. All our competitions require that the private sector matches at least the money they request from us. If a company wants $1 million from us, they've got to put $1 million on the table at least to match our money. We'll go into more detail on that. The other core eligibility criteria, which is the most difficult one we have to deal with, is something called additionality. What that means is that we don't give money to a project that the commercial banks or somebody with more commercial money than us will fund. That doesn't mean you can go to your bank manager and get a letter from your bank manager saying, I hereby confirm that I will not lend you money. You can all do that. It's not quite good enough. We're not here to compete with the commercial banking world. We are here to try to leverage more commercial capital, and we like projects where there's more commercial capital with ours, where our money is used to draw in funds from others. But we do look carefully to see whether you could fund this on your own. What do we provide? We provide grants, and actually this slide's very naughty because we're not allowed to call them loans. Agro is not allowed to give loans because it's a grant-giving body, so we call them repayable grants. But I think you all know what a repayable grant is. And these repayable grants are interest-free, okay? So you can get two things from us. You can get straight grants, and you can get repayable grants. which are interest-free, inverted commas, loans. That's what we have on offer. Whether you ask you may ask just for a grant if you wish. You may ask just for a repairable grant if you wish. You may ask for a mixture of a repairable grant and grant. The only thing I would say to you now is that that is a competitive criteria, and those companies that ask for a 100% loan or 80% loan are more likely to win than those that say, I think I want a free lunch totally. So remember, it's a competitive criteria. You also have to match our money at least 1-to-1, but as Jane mentioned earlier, we're currently leveraging private capital 3 times on what we're putting in. So again, $1 million from us, you put up $1 million, that's fine. You want $1 million from us, but you put up $3 million of your own, we like that better. It's another competitive criteria. You have to gauge in a competition how competitive you wish to be. What are we looking for? We're looking for projects that are commercially viable. I always say this when I'm presenting because I have to be careful what I say. If you write corporate social responsibility in your application to the AECF, you will not get funding. Very odd. We are only interested in business proposals. It's not that we don't like CSR, corporate social responsibility. Of course it's great. But we do not fund corporate social responsibility. We fund business ideas that are out there for business. They must be commercially viable. They may be risky. We are the ultimate risk capital, it is true. But these projects must be commercially viable, number one. Number two, they must have a positive impact, social impact, on people living in rural areas in Africa, preferably poor. We need to see that. And we need to see that these projects have the potential to go to scale. We're not interested in projects that help 100 people. We have some very big targets out there of millions of people to benefit. We're looking for projects that sit in the middle here. That's what we're looking for. Where do we think they are? We think the best projects that will actually affect market systems. Give me 1 minute. What is a market system? What we want to do is to make an impact not just on your business, but on the market system in which you work. In other words, if it's renewable energy in Uganda, what we want to do is to have a real impact on the renewable energy market in Uganda. How do we do that? We want to find projects that are going to cause disruption and innovation in that market. It's a bit like taking a stone, throwing it into a pond, and you get ripples. We want projects that are going to cause ripples. What are ripples? It's because other people are going to copy them. They are going to be able to go to scale. They're going to make a difference in many ways. I could give you an hour on what market system change is all about, but we summarize it in this little graph, and what we say is, what we want is projects that are what? Business orientated and commercially motivated rather than socially motivated, because you go up here, this thing is going to grow and it's going to be driven. And because we're a business innovation fund, we want a lot of innovation. And we think if we can find highly innovative projects that are highly commercially orientated, they're the projects that we want. Jane, you talked about M-Pesa, was a perfect example. Yeah? That $1 million that the DFID put into Vodafone for M-Pesa. What did it do? Not only did it create a money transfer system for 9 million people in Kenya, but right the way across the continent of Africa, everyone's copying it. That's the projects we really need to find in an ideal world. Never easy. How have we done to date? We've run 7 competitions since June 2008. We currently have finalized and are funding 39 projects in 16 countries. Got to be careful what I say because there's someone in the room. but we hope that there will be 49 projects in 19 countries by the end of next week. We've just finalised a round, but we have not made an announcement. We don't yet have a project in Uganda, but we seriously hope that we will, in another week, have a project in Uganda. We've invested 32 million into projects, of what 16 million has been grants and 16 million repairable grants, about 50-50. The private sector has put in $105 million of matching funds, so the total value of our project portfolio currently is 138 million. We estimate that 2.5 million people in rural Africa will benefit from these projects. Pretty impressive data. How have you done the private sector, and how easy is it to get our money? This slide I normally only present to donors, because the donors love this slide. The private sector hates this slide, but I'm going to make you feel better when I finish. 3,100 businesses applied to the AECF since we've started. 1,570 of those submitted fully applicable, on-target proposals to us. William has had to look at 232 of those concepts. And William and his team selected 105 of those to go to business plan. And then William and his team selected 39 to be funded. This looks really tough, doesn't it? It's not a lottery. We still believe that the best come to the top. And for two reasons, I would ask you not to be worried and say, my goodness, it's tough to get your money. So it should be. If you want a free $1 million, it's not a free lunch. You have to work. That's fine. But it isn't quite as hard as it looks this time round. Why? Because this is for competitions across the whole of Africa and for the whole of agribusiness and financial services. This time around, you're competing in a narrower field of renewable energy and climate change, and you're only competing with the 5 countries in East Africa. And everybody that knows Uganda well knows that Uganda can outcompete its neighbours easily. Is that right? Yeah, come on Uganda, let's get a lot of great proposals from it. So what's open to you? There are 2 competitions that are open to you in Uganda. If you go to our website, where we live off, and I will explain that in a minute too,